And we are live. Welcome to our episode of Business Focus Live with me, John, where we talk about business related topics as well as news from here and around the world. If new to this channel, don't forget to subscribe and let's get started. And we're back. Today is Friday, July 10th. So, hello to all the viewers. So, there were some technical difficulties that I encountered earlier. So, sorry for all the viewers who joined me earlier today. So, here's my take two of what I was discussing earlier today. So, thank you for those who sent me a message earlier regarding the problems that you were encountering. So, sorry for that one. Anyway, so without further ado, let's start with our discussion. So for today's main topic, if you notice, there were rumors that Samsung may not be including their power brick in their future flagship phones. This was started when I discussed last week that Apple was rumored to be planning or is removing their power brick in their future iPhone 20. So obviously, they mentioned this is a way to keep down costs since many of their flagship phones is already costing to pushing or breaking the barrier of $1,000 or 50,000 pesos here in the Philippines. So what a way to do to resolve that problem is remove different accessories that you used to get it for free or included in the box. Now it's not included, so you have to pay for it separately. Now, obviously, they're arguing that it's for environmental purposes, so that they don't have to package it as big as the way they did, so they can make it smaller and so forth. But what's interesting here is they're going to sell you the power brick as a separate accessory. So what does it mean? More profit for them while reducing the cost in their main smartphone devices. Now, obviously, it makes sense for them to remove the power brick since obviously many previous users have already other chargers that they're already laying at hand at their homes. But how about the new users who's transitioning and buying their brand for the first time? So this does not make sense on a user perspective, but obviously it does make sense for the business as a whole. Now, it's one thing that you remove the charger. What they include in their box to begin with is a 25-watt charger, which they could have offered a more powerful fast charging with a 45-watt fast charging capability. That should be an industry standard, especially for a flagship device. Now, if you're a customer, they did the poll and asking, with regards to the Apple users, 77% were angry that Apple may not include a charger with their iPhone 12. So what do you think will happen if Samsung were to implement this uh, tactic? Now, you can make all the excuses for on the business side, but at the end of the day, customers are spending thousands of dollars and you expect them to just accept it. But at the end of the day, it's the user who has a big say here. If you still buy their product, it's telling them that it's okay, that what they're doing. Now, on the other hand, there's one thing that Samsung is doing correctly here or better than other companies is they have the capability to provide a larger capacity for their battery pack. So meaning longer life, so you don't have to charge it as often. So in this article, so let me take a look here. Where is it? There you go. So according to the article here, Samsung's battery pack will be implemented in their budget phones, the M41s, with a monster 6800 milliamps capability. That's going to compete with other budget phones like the iPhone SE. Now, obviously, this is a big plus for many users, so you don't have to worry about charging it over and over. Now, although with its capacity is impressive, the maximum charging speed is only 15 watts. Okay? So obviously, you still need to have the high capacity charging combined with the high capacity battery pack to maximize its usability. Now, obviously, one thing you would like to ask the company, Samsung, if you are able to develop high capacity power bricks or battery pack for your mobile phones, why not introduce it in all of your brand or in all of your brands all the way to your flagship model? Now, one of their main concern is obviously if you include a bigger battery pack that would make the device more thicker. And obviously their primary focus is to appease the different features that the customers or users have been accustomed. Better screen, thinner phone, better camera, and so forth. And typically the battery, you know, comes last in their list of features that they want improved. But I think Samsung can incorporate all of it. Now that's just something that they can charge more for it if they can provide better value for their product. Not take away features so customer has to pay it separately, which they give it, for free to begin with, or not free, but included in the price tag of a brand new smartphone. So hopefully they can implement it in their future phones and as well as their flagship phones. Now speaking of retailers, now if you're familiar with the retail brand Brooks and Brothers, now sad to say they're being hit hard in this difficult time, the outbreak as I mentioned. They're now filing for bankruptcy. So, they're looking for buyers as they close dozens of stores nationwide as well as worldwide. Now, if for those who are not familiar, Brooks Brothers is a very old company. They've been established for more than 100 years, way back in 1818, way before my time, before our grandparents' time, and before them. So they're a retailer primarily known for chic and pioneer polo and uniform of the polished prepster look. So they have more than 200 stores in the United States as well as 500 stores worldwide. Even though they've generated almost 1 billion sales last year, that wasn't enough to keep them stay afloat during this crisis. As you may have noticed in this difficult time, many businesses, small or big, have been affected tremendously. Now, question is how come some businesses are still doing well or have been able to survive the difficult time while others are not? Well, maybe one of the reason is growing too fast. Being too greedy at times could be a bad thing. Now, during good times, during the good economic times, business can take advantage of the global economy, but in difficult time, it would affect us tremendously. So now they're looking for ways how to stabilize their business in terms of selling it off. Now, obviously, there are a lot of interested buyers, but they are apprehensive of in terms of buying the entire company as a whole. So they would like to trim it down in terms of the number of stores that they would acquire. And I think it's a good reason to go back to their core business where they were good at. So what segments were they strong at and go back to its roots and start from there before growing or expanding the business again like they did currently. Now they've, as I mentioned, more than 500 stores worldwide as well as 4,000 employees. Now obviously, if they close all of those stores, what will happen to those employees? So that would contribute even further to the unemployment rates in the economy, which doesn't bode well. That's why, company has to do their part, the government has to do their part. They both have to be responsible in taking care of their standing as well as help one another. So it's not only the Brooks Brothers that have filed for bankruptcy. In previous discussion, JC Crew is one of them, Neiman Marcus is another, and JC Penney. So even established brands or retail brands have been affected now. On the other hand, like Walmart, Costco are doing well. So what is their business model that makes them successful while compared to others that made it difficult for them to survive or they have to close shop at the end? Now, continuing on some tech news. Now, for those who are familiar with Nintendo, now they're now known for their console for the Nintendo Switch, which I am a user as well. Now, for those who are not familiar or not a Switch user, there is a so-called problem that you would encounter later once you started using the device, the so-called Joy-Con drift. meaning the left thumbstick, once you use it over and over, there will be a somewhat of a shadowy movement. When you're not moving it, it will move on its own, or if you try to move it on one direction, it would go to another. Now, when I saw this problem, I thought it was my problem. I broke the device and so forth. But what I came to realize, there were other users that have the same problem, and it was not an isolated case. Now, obviously, this was reported to Nintendo, and more often than not, what happened? And to the point that someone filed a lawsuit last July against Nintendo. As mentioned, the joystick or on Joy-Con controllers are defective, leading to users to experience drift issues. Okay, so question is, what will be the outcome? So what should Nintendo have done in the first place? I'm sure they've done many testings in their devices, and hopefully they have already seen that there were problems that would have arisen. Now, obviously, we are here now today seeing the problems the way it is. Companies should have been responsible in admitting the mistake that they did and try to correct it. So let's say if you're a user, they should be willing to fix it and replace it outright. And then promise that for future devices that they would fix this immediately, so this does not occur again. Now, what did Nintendo do? The president just apologized for the problem, but did not say anything else, obviously, due to the lawsuit that was happening. Now, they were suggesting that in terms of what's funny here is, if you're a Nintendo user, they would also suggest that you go to a website and ask for help, and they would give you suggestion as to how to fix the Joy-Con drift, as I mentioned. Either recalibrate and update the firmware, so hopefully that fixes the problem, or you use a contact cleaner to clean the device. Now, if that doesn't work, then you're on your own. So you can go to Nintendo and have it repaired, hopefully free of charge. Now, obviously, we don't have Nintendo here. We only have distributors that sells the product. Now, for those who are using Nintendo Switch, do you have the same problems that I have? And what have you done? So hopefully you have a better experience than I did. Now, continuing with updates from our previous live stream. Now, last week we've discussed about TikTok scenario wherein TikTok was banned in India, a major market player in using TikTok. They have several millions of users. And now with the latest article, according to Tech Times, that the Chinese app TikTok could lose as much as $6 billion. That's a big drop from their, big drop of sales due to the many users that have to switch to a different platform altogether. And it's not just the Indian government that is stating this due to what do you call this? Safety issue or security issue, sorry. An infamous hacktivist group called Anonymous made a warning to all well-known Chinese app users, stating that it's not safe to use their app. So you need to delete it right away from your phone before anything happens to your data. So the said app is a Chinese malware wherein it could gather CPU type, memory usage, disk space, and hardware IDs of all its users, meaning they'll get vital information from individual users. So especially if it's a big market enough, they'll be able to identify what their patterns is and of so forth, and take advantage of that information. Now, it's not just India who's alarmed and has to the point of banning them altogether. Now, there were reports now even in the United States. The President of the United States, President Trump, is considering banning TikTok as well. So what will happen to this company? Now, obviously, TikTok as company is not to blame in a sense, but because of their association with the Chinese government, everything that is tied with the Chinese government has always been associated with the security risk, apart from TikTok, Huawei, and such companies, such Chinese companies. So other 59 apps in the app stores or play stores are going to be banned. So, citing national security and defense issues. So, what will happen to them? Now, obviously, this is bad news for TikTok, but good news for other companies who can step in and substitute for TikTok. So, obviously, for any business, there are always pros and cons, opportunities and threats. Question is, what can TikTok do now? Now, even though TikTok has invested even more to the Indian market, as much as $1 billion, and now that's all gone to waste simply because the government is restricting their involvement. So what will happen to the company? We have to wait and see. So we'll be able to sustain that, hopefully. Continuing, speaking of Wirecard, so if you're familiar with our previous discussion on the scandal involving the Wirecard company, Wirecard is a payment system similar to how PayPal works. They are involved with collaborating with companies like Visa and MasterCard. Now, they are embroiled in the scandal where did the $2 billion sales that they generate or receipts went to? Now, according to the article, it was all falsified to begin with. So let's take a look here. Where's the article? Can't see it. There you go. So, as mentioned earlier, the article that mentions the scandal that they are embroiled in. So the question here is, what's going on in? Is it fraud, or is there an actual money that was, funneled to somewhere else? But according to the previous article, as mentioned, that it was all fraudulent because an auditor from Ernst & Young stated that they could not identify where the almost $2 billion worth of amount of money went to. But if that were the case, then why the elaborate scheme of planting false information, like in the case of this, that the ex-CEO Marsalek went to the Philippines, and not just went to the Philippines. There were fictitious accounts that were created in the Philippines using two financial banking institutions, BPI and BDO. Now, the companies are contesting that there was no such company, no such accounts created. But the question is, why did those individuals involved, like the tellers or employees of said companies, create the fictitious account? Was it to mislead the authorities, or did it actually create an actual account where money was funneled? We don't know. And another report was a Filipino lawyer was involved in this scandal, wherein the Filipino lawyer, Mr. Tolentino, denied that he had any knowledge of the said company association. So again, why the elaborate falsifying of information? Now, according to the article as mentioned here, now the ex-CEO is being hunted because there was a warrant of arrest for him with the associated scandal. Now, according to the Justice Secretary Menardo Guevara, it was stated that he was purportedly arrived in the Philippines last month, and after 3 days went to China afterwards. And it was all falsified. Again, in the immigration, why is it that there's trails of information where individuals were, like in this case, Marsalek was to be found? So was it to mislead the authorities, or was the actual information to be corroborated? We'll never know until the government digs deeper here. So at the end of the day, was there actual money funneled, or is just a falsification to what they call this, to embolden or to make it look like the company Wirecard is a big company the way it is, which to begin with was not true. Anyway, the individuals mentioned was suspected of market manipulation and false accounting and fraud. That's why they're being hunted down by their respective governments. Now, obviously, according to the lawyer of Marcellus is denying all requests for comment. Okay? And continuing, speaking of theme parks, so now we've been discussing before that many businesses have been trying to reopen slowly but surely, and one such company is planned to reopening by later this week, which is the Disney company, the Disneyland theme parks. Now, obviously, the company of Disneyland or Disney company, one of the major concerns here obviously is the visitors who are visiting their establishment. It's not just individuals, but droves of individuals, meaning kids, adults, and elderlies will visit their establishment. And obviously, one of their primary concern is the safety of the individuals. Now, obviously, it's not just the individuals or the visitors that we should be concerned here, as well as the employees or staff members. Now, obviously, staff members have voiced their concerns through their labor unions, as well as protesting in front of Disney theme parks, stating that it's too soon to reopen the theme parks. Now, despite all of those scenarios or despite all of those happening, they're still on track to open later this week. Now, is it safe? Would you visit their theme parks? Is it safe to come out? Now, obviously, especially in Florida, state of Florida, where Disney World is housed. Now, cases of the virus has been increasing significantly. Now, would you risk that? And another thing, they've already made disclaimers that they will not be held liable if visitors were to contract any virus at any point. So you're absolving yourself of any responsibility, yet you're willing to risk your you're willing to risk your visitors to contract the virus, and as well as your employees or workers. Now, the workers are asking for testing. I think testing is a good idea for addressing this concern or alleviating the concern. If visitors can come in having tested and say, I'm good to go, then there's less chance of spreading the virus, as well as for the employees. Now, obviously, if you're testing every employees in the Disney theme park, that's going to cost a lot of money for the company, which obviously they don't want to do. But at the end of the day, if you want to open now, you have to do all of the measures to protect the interest, not just of your employees, as well as your visitors, as well as the company as a whole, because it would be a PR nightmare if that were the case, that later on, if a visitor were to get infected as well as employees, and the company Disney did nothing to circumvent that, or to minimize or remove the risk altogether, and rather than risk closing the entire theme park as a whole. So we'll wait and see what happens there. And finally, for some local news, okay? So if you're familiar with Lazada, so there are concerns regarding people buying products online. So in terms of being asked regarding the policies for buying scene products that they call. So buying of alcohol, buying of cigarettes or e-cigarettes from sellers or resellers who are not registered with the government. So obviously the government is asking, not just asking, but monitoring or telling the SADA that are they doing their part to protect the interests of minors. Now obviously it's not enough that Lazada is informing customers that they check if they are minor and so forth. They have to be put in a situation, but they should be held liable if a minor were able to buy those same products, and they should be penalized for that, so that they would ensure and be responsible enough to make sure that no such minors have access to those same products. And they have to make sure that all of those resellers or sellers to begin with are being responsible. Otherwise, they will always find a way to circumvent the process, whether, let's say, you pay online, you need credit card information, you can always get your credit card information from someone else. Maybe you can authenticate it and so forth, or maybe pay in cash. Then you have to, as mentioned here, they're asking, let's say, if it's delivered to your home, you pay it in cash, you have to present an ID. But again, there are many ways to circumvent the process. So it's incumbent from the SADA to protect the interests of minors, so that minors are not being taken advantage easily. Because if you go to a store, you have to present an ID, so there's less likely that minors can buy scene products to begin with. Hopefully, the SADA and the government can work together, find ways to ensure that the public's interest, in this case the minors, are protected. So again, for the second time in a row. So if you have any questions regarding today's topic, feel free to leave your comments down below and I'll get back to you. So also, don't forget to hit the notification bell icon so you can stay updated with the latest news as well as videos from here and around the world. As always, thanks for watching. I'll see you again next week. Same time, same channel. Take care. So where's the end stream? So,